زكيها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. At the beginning, let me express my apology for being slightly late. I think I miscalculated the traffic on the motorway around this time, but alhamdulillah I'm here. And if you remember the last week or the week before that actually, I spoke about how it's important that we actually deal with actual problems that might be present in society. And believe me, I know that there are many problems within our communities. And if there are any questions, then I will deal with them as they come, especially from the sisters. If you have any question, then send them as soon as possible. I will not, don't wait until the end, we may not have enough time. If you remember, we also spoke about the purpose one gets married in the first place. There are many reasons for marriage, but one of them, maybe an important one, is that you marry so that your partner, your wife, or if you're a woman, your husband, helps you to attain the pleasure of Allah. That's very, very important. You marry someone who will help you attain the pleasure of Allah. And that's why marriage is half deen. فَاتَّقِ اللَّهِ فِي النِّصْفِ الْآخِرِ. So a wife or a husband is meant to help you attain the pleasure of Allah. And the pleasure of Allah is attained by certain things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself described. I only gain the pleasure of Allah the way He wants, not the way I want. Very important point. Some people think that they can please Allah the way they want. No, you please Allah the way He wants, and He has specified the ways to please Him. And one of them, and you will find that in the Quran, this follows immediately after believing in Allah. For example, in Surah Luqman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِبَنِيهِ وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Followed by what? By وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. So after establishing the oneness of Allah and not associate partners of Allah, Allah immediately went to state that we have entrusted man, we have entrusted the parents of man to him. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ. His mother bore him, حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ, from weakness to weakness, or difficulty to difficulty. So the keeping the bonds, especially with one's parents, is a very important way of gaining the pleasure of Allah. And therefore marriage in Islam, brothers and sisters, as I said before, is a family thing. It's two families coming together, two extended families coming together. And therefore in Islam it is important that the guardian of the bride, of the woman, is in agreement with this marriage and is there to bless this marriage, and it is there to give his daughter or his trust in marriage. Many of us living in this day and age and watching TV, we tend, as young people, we tend to put a lot of stress or a lot of importance on the romantic side of marriage and love and what have you, and we may think that love in itself will sustain us and is so important that you cannot lose it, and therefore sometimes for the sake of love, especially sisters, listen to this, very important. For the sake of love, we might even cut the ties of our blood, and for the sake of marrying a particular person, we might go against our parents, we might go against the family, we might go even in some cases against our religion. Okay, and that is unfortunately a very big loss. And there are two things here. Please listen to this. There are two sides to the coin. Some of you might think that I am saying that young people should not go against their parents. That's one side of the coin. There's another side. And that the other side is parents don't force your children to go against you. That's an important side as well. There are many parents today who put their children in such a situation that their children have no option except to disobey and go away. Don't lose your children. I'm saying to parents, if your daughter wants to marry someone, she is persistent, then so be it. Let her marry him. And let her marry him with your blessing. And be there for her. Okay, this is her life. If your son wants to marry someone, so be it. As long as it's not haram, or as long as it's not going to be such a catastrophe that it cannot be amended. If your son comes and he says he wants to marry Janet, who is his classmate, and he's in love with her, but she's a Christian, what do you expect? You brought him in this country, you brought him up in this country, it can happen. Okay? And if you're clever, you will let it be. Okay? Let's speak to her, bring her home, let me talk to her, find out, is she a Christian? If she is a Christian, well, your husband, your son is allowed to marry her. Okay? Is she willing to bring up any future children as Muslims? So anyone who comes to me for marriage and is marrying a Christian, there are two conditions I impose on the wife-to-be. The first condition is that any children out of this marriage must be brought up as Muslims. If she agrees, she puts it in writing. Okay? That's number one. And number two, that if the husband dies before she does, then he is to be buried in a Muslim cemetery according to Muslim rituals. Because we have cases where a Muslim man is married to a Christian woman, he dies, and then she goes and incremates him. Because she has legal right over him. You cannot stop it. Okay, so we put that as a condition, and it must be written, and if that happens, then let the marriage continue. But sisters are more vulnerable than brothers in this. If you go against your parents' desire, and you run away from home, and you marry a person, and then the marriage doesn't work, okay? And then you'll discover that love is not the only thing that sustains life on this earth, and you have misplaced your trust in someone who is not worthy of it, and you have loved someone who doesn't know what love means, okay? You've given up your parents, your mother, your brothers and sisters, you've run away from them, and now you're divorced. And possibly you may even have some children. What are you going to do? You're cut off from the world, you're by your own. Okay, you don't have the sanctity of your family anymore. Of course, if you go back to your family, they may take you in, because that's what parents are. They want the best for their children, and they may even force them, but at the end of the day, they are your parents, and they will accept you if you come back. In most cases, there are cases where the father is adamant and he will not have his children, but anyway. But what do we say about those who marry with the blessing of their families, how do they maintain the blood ties, which is a very important topic. It was stated that we live in a community that is individualistic, and it's true. And our communities are moving towards the nucleus community rather than the collective community. We're moving from the collective to the nucleus. Even us as Muslim communities, it is happening. And there is an attraction, a genuine, real attraction in the nucleus community. In the nucleus community, I do what I want. I'm my own man. I marry my wife, I live with her the way I like, we do whatever we want to do, no one interferes in our life. In the collective community, the father, the mother, the parents-in-law, the uncles, the aunts, they all interfere in our life. And they all want to dictate to us how to live our life. Okay? And no one wants that. I bet you no one wants that. In the collective community, there is a sense of obligation and a sense of duty. I must take care of my parents. I have to. I can't, ya akhi. I come from this community. In the nucleus community, no, I don't. Your parents can go to the sick people's house or old people's house or whatever. Okay? They should mend. They should fend for themselves. Okay? And the sense of obligation, of responsibility can be felt as a burden. It is a burden. And therefore, some of us may not want it, or may not like it, or may try to avoid that responsibility. However, let me also say that it seems to me, from my experience, it seems to me that we must pay a price. We can pay this price up front, from at the beginning of our lives, or we can pay it at the end of our lives. But we have to pay it. Okay? If we opted for the nucleus community life, being independent and on our own, a time will come when we will grow old and we will be on our own, and there is no one to care for us, there is no one to love us, there is no one to be with us. And as a counselor working in a GP, I come across all people. And I have come across many women, especially women, after the age of 40, who have nothing to live for. They only live for their whiskey and TV and loneliness. The best of them might have a dog or a cat. No man wants them. Their husband or their partner or whatever they call them has long left them. Okay? If there are any children, they are living their own life and they don't come and visit. And this woman is living in a flat in some council housing. Okay? She comes home, there is no one, it's cold, and she's living a miserable life. Okay, do you want that life? Now you're young. You don't see this coming. But if you live that life, if you live her life when she was young, you will have her life when she's old. Okay? So it is very important to understand that the collective community is a safety net. It works, and it works especially as you need the community, as you need your relatives and your parents and your brothers and your sisters. When you're young and strong, you may not feel that you need them. On the contrary, you may feel that they need you and they have demands on you, and that is true. But as you grow older and weaker, you will come to need them more and more. I'll give you the difference between an old man in an old man's house, an old people's house. And it's time for meals. Okay? And the nurse comes in with the meal. She puts it on his table. She says to him, eat. He says, I don't feel like eating. What do you think she will say to him? That's your choice. It's up to you. The food is there. If you want to eat it, fine. If you don't want to eat it, we'll take it away. If he's with his children living at home, his daughter or his daughter-in-law brings in the meal. Okay. There's the food. Eat it, Dad. You say, I don't really feel like it. What do you think she will say? Oh, come on, let me feed you. Let me hear. It's really nice. I cooked it with my own hands. Here, have some. There's a big difference. Okay? The human link, the love, the mercy in this bond is really uplifting and really worth the effort, and really worth the price that we have paid when we were young to be part of that community. I'm, of course, talking on the practical level, not talking on the religious level. On the religious level, I take it that you all understand the importance of keeping blood ties, that it is part and parcel, a package of our faith. That if you cut your links with your family, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be angry with you. Okay? And that whoever links his relatives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will link with him. Whoever cuts his relatives, cuts them off, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cut him off. But on the practical side, an important question that comes is, how do we maintain this blood tie, living our lives as they are today? And we live a high-paced life. In the West, in the UK, you're always busy, even if you're unemployed. The pace of life is very fast. In our country, it isn't. It's very relaxed, very slow. Okay? Of course, one could argue either way whether that's good or bad. But that's beside the point. What we need to know is that we could very easily lose our contact with our relatives in this country. Very easily. There is so much to keep us busy and to keep us frequently occupied that we may not have time to link with our relatives. Not only our uncles and aunts and cousins, but even our parents. If you leave it to chance, if you say to yourself, these are my parents, I will of course link with them, I will of course go and visit them, but you don't specify a day, okay, and you don't have a system, then I can bet you that a month or two can pass sometimes without you even picking up the phone. It could be easily done, and therefore what do you do? Remember when I spoke about having a meeting, a family meeting, the round table I spoke about? When the mother, the father, the children sit around a table and they discuss their affairs, and that it must be something that happens frequently, every week, every 2 weeks, every month. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Remember how I spoke about the family day, where you have to specify a day, and this is for the family, this is for your wife and your children, quality time to be spent with your family. You must also specify a day for your parents and your brothers and sisters. You must. It must be a specific day. Once every week. Yes. I think if you are the father, the great father, okay, and your children are married and they're gone out of the house, okay, then you must specify a day. The family day, you can choose the family day, where you have a meal, and your children, they all come. Okay, let it be Sunday, for example. They must come to this day. Your children, if you have grandchildren, then your grandchildren, and this is the family day. And it is a Sunday, or a Monday, or whatever day you decide. Okay? If you have this system in place, then your children will come and gather every week. Otherwise, you're going to lose touch. If that doesn't happen, then there is a chance that you might lose touch with your children, okay, and not see them for months sometimes. Can easily happen, okay? Let me now come to an important, sensitive point. The system that we have imported with us from back home, where a son, when he marries, he must bring his wife and live with his parents. On the outset, it might seem to be a good idea. The son marries a woman, brings her and takes a room in his parents' house, and stays with his parent. What better way than to maintain the blood ties? Actually, it might work in the opposite direction. And more often than not, it does. First of all, these homes that we live in are not made for such extended families. They're not. The walls are too thin. There's no privacy. Usually it's a big family. You marry your wife and you live in your parents' house, and your brothers are coming and going out of the house. It's just not the proper set for you and your wife. The other most likely thing that will happen is that your wife and your mother will not see end to end. Very natural. Okay? Your mother could be the best mother in the world, and your wife could be the best wife in the world. It's just that when they are together, you have Third World War. Natural. Can happen. And this actually helped to cause problems in the blood ties. If you have children, the children will see the point of view of their mother, and they might come to hate their grandmother. Okay? Very easily. Can happen. Okay? You may develop some hate for your mother. You will not be able to voice it. Okay? And you will try to push it back, and shaitan will work on it. Or you may hate your wife and divorce her. Okay? All because you're living in the same house. So my advice to parents, okay, when your son marries, kick him out of the house. Kick him out. You want to marry? Fine. Go out. My advice to you, if you want to get married by all means. The sooner the better. But go and live by yourself. Go and live outside your parents' house. Okay? This will help maintain the blood ties. Because you come to visit your parents as a family. You can visit your parents every day if you like. But as a family, I suggest once a week. Bring your wife to your mother and your father and your brothers and sisters. And if you've got children, then bring them and visit your parents once a week. Okay? You can visit your parents every day if you want. Okay? That's up to you. But as a family, bring them once a week twice a week, 3 times a week, even every day if you like, an hour. But you have your own base. You have your own home. Your wife is the queen of her dominion, of her home. She can choose the color of her living room. She can move about the furniture in the house. It's her house. If you make her live in your parents' house, she can't even move a spoon. Because if she does, then the mistress of the house will be very angry. Your mother. Okay? Natural. As I said, your mother could be the best mother in the world. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to put the ingredient of love and mercy between the man and his wife, and not between the wife and the mother-in-law. He didn't promise that. And looking at the nature of things, this is what we conclude. We conclude that if people live together, they come under each other's skin. Very natural. Okay? So one way of maintaining the ties is to make sure that this friction does not develop in the first place, or if it's there, to try to dissipate it as best and as soon as you can. If you're stuck, let's take the situation, Yahi, I'm stuck, I do live with my parents. I'm married, and me and my wife, we live in our parents, and there is no way we can leave. What do? Well, you try to compensate. You try to make up. Okay? You must take your wife out of that environment as frequently as possible. You must make her feel that you appreciate the sacrifices that she's making. Your wife is there, she's living with your mother and father, she's taking care of them to an extent, she's cooking for them, okay? And she doesn't have to. There's nothing in Islam that she says that she must do this. She doesn't have to, okay? Is this something not worth being grateful for? And if you are grateful for it, then show it. I don't know whether you're grateful about something I'm doing unless you tell me. Unless you come to me and you say to me, thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm really happy that you are doing this. And it goes a really long way to be appreciated. Your wife needs to be, you're living with your parents, you've lived with them all your life. But this new person that you brought into your life is having to live with your family. Okay? She loves you. She is married to you. She doesn't necessarily love your parents and your children and your brothers and sisters. Okay? And she doesn't necessarily get along with them. But if she's there for you, okay, then appreciate her. Take her out. Go to the cinema. Go to a park. Go on a holiday. Go to a restaurant. Don't bring your mother along. That's what some brothers do. Okay? They go out, they must take the mother with them. And if not the mother, then the sister. And there's a sense of obligation. If I take my wife, I have to take my mother. If I take my wife, I have to take my sister. Who said? Who said? You're trying to compensate here. You're trying to give your wife some space where you and her are by yourself. So if you're in that situation, if you want to maintain the blood ties, if you want to maintain the balance within the extended family, then you have to make up, you have to compensate. Okay? And you have to make a stand. You have to make a stand. And you have to show affection to your wife in front of your family. This is something that we don't do. Okay? I know cases where the mother refuses that her son sits by his wife. He can't, no, you can't sit by your wife. Sit beside your wife in your bedroom. Allahu Akbar, what's wrong? What's wrong with me sitting beside my wife and holding her hand and patting it? Haram? It's not haram. And it needs to be done. And you need to say in front of your mother to your wife, I love you, wife. Nothing wrong with it. The Prophet ﷺ has said many times that he loves Aisha radiallahu anha. Okay? Because this helps your wife to feel that she's wanted, that she's appreciated, and despite the fact that she might be suffering, that she is there, she feels that sometimes she's a slave rather than a wife, but at least it helps her, you know, to say, well, I'm doing this sacrifice, but I'm getting all this in return. If you feel that there is a problem, that you are facing a problem in terms of maintaining blood ties, okay, because of problems between your mother and your wife, because of things like that, then there is help outside there. Seek it. Don't take the suffering and the pain alone. Seek help. There are many people that offer this kind of help and can help you. Okay? Maybe I'm advertising my own career, but there you go. The other point that I want to make is that it is very important, especially for the wife. And sister, please, please, please listen to this. A good wife is one who will always remind her husband to look up on his relatives. If your husband forgets, remind him. If your husband doesn't, you take the step. For example, it's Eid, phone your mother-in-law. You phone her. And then give the phone to your husband. If your mother-in-law lives in another country or in another city and you can't go and visit her, then you do that. You take the initiative. And you always try to make your husband do the right thing by his relatives. I know a man who earns quite a lot of money. He's a football player. Okay? He earns quite a lot of money. I think something like 100,000 a year. Okay? And he decided to give 10,000 to his mother. And his wife made such a fuss about it. She wasn't very happy, and she acted as if though, you know, those 10,000 that out of the 100,000 that he's giving his mother is actually coming out of her own pocket, or is denying her food or her clothes. I don't want that wife. I'm better off by getting myself rid of her. Okay? But a good wife should always encourage you to do the right thing by your relatives. And if they come and visit, even if she hates their guts, she must act as if though she's over the moon by seeing them. Okay? Why? Because this opens a door in your heart for her. Because you will appreciate her more, you will love her more, you will do things for her more. If you see that your wife is, you know, very keen on you maintaining these blood ties, doing the right thing by your relatives, being there for them, helping them out at their hour of need, then you will appreciate her and you will love her more. And even if you somehow have managed to have your grip on your husband, and you think that the way forward is to keep him as much away from his relatives and his parents as possible, then you're going to see this in your children, and you're going to eventually lose your husband. Because some sisters think that the best way is to drive a wedge between the husband and his relatives. And sometimes she is brought up like this. You know, the mother can tell her daughter, when you marry, make sure that you have total control over your husband and keep him away from his parents as far as possible. That's the wrong way. It doesn't please Allah. And it's not the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it will make your husband hate you in the long run. The most important advice I can give today is that you must have a system in place where you keep in touch and be linked with your relatives, especially your parents. If you don't have a system, you will run out of steam and you will lose contact. Very natural. I'll call them tomorrow, I'll call them next week, I'll call them the week after. Yahi, I'm very busy now, my parents are there. And suddenly you wake up and your parents are not there. They're gone. They're dead. And this brings me to a case where someone's parents are dead. Can you maintain ties with them? Yes, you can. How do you maintain ties with them? You must pray for them in your prayer. Some scholars say that in every prayer, 5 times a day, you must pray for your parents. Otherwise, you're not a faithful son. 5 times a day in your prayer while you're in sujood. That's the nearest you are Allah. To Allah. You say, "Oh Allah, have mercy on my parents as they brought me up when I was young." The other way is if your father has not done pilgrimage, to do pilgrimage on his behalf after you do your own. You cannot do pilgrimage, you cannot do Hajj on behalf of anyone until you yourself have done Hajj. If you've done Hajj, your father hasn't, he's passed away, your mother hasn't, she's passed away, then you can perform Hajj on her behalf. Or Umrah, as many times as you can. Or read the Quran during Ramadan or otherwise on their behalf. Or give sadaqah on their behalf. Cherish their memory. Visit them in the graves. Indeed, one of the best ways is to maintain relations with their friends. If your father has a friend, then, and he keeps visiting him, then you visit the friend of your father. And that's keeping the memory of your father alive and doing the things that your father liked to do when he was alive. Visit the friends of your mother. Okay? Keep that relationship, keep the link there, and don't cut it off. This is the case where your parents have passed away. Okay? I will stop here and see if you've got any questions or comments. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك